Hi, thanks for joining us today for this Agape video. Today I want to talk a little bit about the God who is versus the God who is not. You know, when I was growing up, I really didn't think God loved me. I thought he was very distant. He was judging me. He wanted to get me. He was disappointed with me, was condemning. And I just was afraid of him, to be honest with you. I really didn't think he was someone I could be close to. Now, Jesus, on the other hand, was different. Jesus was someone I could believe in. Jesus was someone who I could get close to. He was a man. He came and died for me. So here I was on earth just trying to get by with a God who was very distant, very angry with me, very hard to get to know. And that's just kind of how I operated for a number of years, doing things, really, it's just religion, trying to appease this angry God. And then one day I came down with an illness. I woke up one morning. I was literally filled with nerve pain in my hands, my feet, my legs, my head and tongue. It was just really all over. I began to lose weight, became very dizzy, could hardly walk, muscle pain, joint issues. It was just really, really frightening time. And I went to so many neurological doctors, and none of them could understand what was wrong with me. Went through more tests than I can tell you. Had more needles into my body than I can tell you. And none of it, after it was all done, none of it could tell me what was wrong with me. As a matter of fact, I had one doctor say, Scott, there's no need for you to come and see me again because there's nothing I can do for you. And so in the midst of this incredible contradiction to the love of God, I was crying out and saying, God, why? Why would you let this happen? Why don't you care about me? What have I done? I've done something, somehow. And God, in my heart and spirit, just sort of answered back and said, would you be willing to believe that I am a good God and I have always loved you perfectly in the midst of every contradiction? And if you're willing to accept that, would you then be willing to trust me in the midst of it and believe that I care about you? And it took me months before I was willing to say, yes, I'm willing to go there with you. But when I did that, over time, amazing things began to happen. My understanding of God literally was just crushed. All the theology I grew up with that I really believed in was crushed. And God began to replace what I thought was God with who he actually was. And the reality was that in every contradiction, in every situation, in my entire life, God was a good God and he was loving me. He always cared about me. There was never a time that he abandoned me. There was never a time he didn't want to be with me. There was never a time that he didn't care for me. And it was so great to have all that stuff that I used to believe about the God being a God of judgment, a God who is angry, a God who is after you, a God who's going to get you if you do bad. No, that's never been who he was. And I have found such peace and rest in knowing the true God who is a God of love. What is your concept of God? Maybe the father you had was abusive or verbally abusive or abandoned you. Or other things even worse. Well, see, that's not who he is. God is a God of love. He's never abandoned you. He's never abused you. He would never do that. In this world, there is evil. And where there's freedom, where there's that ability to choose, there can be evil. And evil things can happen. But it wasn't God doing that to you. God loves you. He cares about you. He's never taken his mind off of you. You were right in the middle of his attention. He has always cared for you. In Genesis chapter 1, it says you were made and created in his likeness and image so that you could therefore be in relationship with him. What? A relationship of love and trust. Also, it says that he blessed you. The word for blessed there in the Hebrew has the ideal of adoration. It's like a parent looking down at a newborn and adoring them. That's how God sees you. He just adores you. Not based on your behavior, not based on your conduct, not based on your performance. That's religion. It's based on what he's done. And boy, what rest that brings. In 1 John, it says that God is love. Not that he just loves, that's who he is. It's not that God is love and he's holy. No, he is love and out of that, he's holy. It's not that he is love and he's just. No, he's love and out of that flows his justice. You see, that's his character and nature. A lot of people ask the question, is Jesus like God? Well, I think a better question is God like Jesus? Well, according to Jesus, he is, because Jesus said this, if you've seen me, you have seen the Father. To know him, look at Jesus. You may be feeling abandoned right now. You may feel like God doesn't care about your situation. You may feel distant from you, that he's condemning you, that he's never pleased with you. But here's the thing, none of that is true. and I'm a testimony to it. I'm a witness to it. None of that's true. He's a God who has always cared about you. He's always loved you, and he's always wanted a relationship with you. In the next video, we're going to talk more about that and the relationship of the Father, Son, and Spirit, and how you have been brought into the very middle of that love, and you've always been there. Apart from your works or any decisions you've made or anything you've done, you say that's all religion. What's important is what God has done on your behalf. That's called grace. And God would just like to know, would you be willing to kiss back? Would you be willing to enjoy the relationship? Thanks so much for joining us for this video. We love you and look forward to the next time together.